our third panelist, Dr. Adejuwon, say something to our crowd. You are muted. Unmute. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, except that I cannot see myself on the screen.
Go to your camera, the video prompt. Yes, the stop video. Just click it so that it takes away the cancellation.
Start video.
Yes. Yes, down. You see where your microphone is. You also find.
Okay. I can see that. I've done that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Adejuwon. Presently, I am the Chief Executive Officer, Digital Environmental Management System, and I was a former Director, Department of Climate Change, Federal Ministry of Environment. I've been engaging in consultancy work since I left the service in 2015. And Dr. Much, I want to register my appreciation to the organizer of this meeting, and still trying to fish me out of the water, to make my own little contribution. And just like you said earlier, I can understand the angle from which Ochubo was coming from, but at least we can do a little bit of justice to what is being said here. And of course, participation of the drivers, just like he said, is very essential. But notwithstanding, we try as much as possible to see how we can represent them, and that probably the next series of the meeting can take care of that particular, lapses. Yes, I am trying to look at the financial sector emission policy response on climate change influence, or climate influence as the topic seems to be. And the angle at which I try to approach it is just to first of all consider the issue that the climate change is, combating or mitigating climate change is an ongoing issue. And if you look at all the actions, the mitigation, the adaptation, development and transfer of technology, education and awareness raising, all these are supposed to be implemented through the finance. And this is where finance become critical. And when we are doing that, we are also talking of how financial sector within the economic system becomes very, very relevant. The fact that, the climate change concerns has become a global reality is drawing us more closer and is making us to see what we can, do with respect to mitigating climate change. We are very much aware of the threat of food security, inundation of coastal line, global burden of diseases, extreme weather events, instability of economy depending on fossil fuels, like we in Nigeria, and social frictions that are attendant on climate change. These are few of the impact of climate change, which makes it compulsory for us to be talking about it and how we can improve on that. But the most disruptive impacts can still be mitigated if urgent action is taken to ensure a peak in greenhouse gas emissions and then a decline in global emission before 2050. as far as we are concerned in Nigeria, because I want to come home, we have offered ourselves a kind of unique opportunity of reducing our emission, by being party to international climate change treaties, such as the UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, the Doha Amendments, the more importantly, and the recently adopted the Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015, and coincidentally, we have signed up to the agreement. Let me also remind us very quickly before I go into the policy section that the Potsdam Institute of Climate Change, they came out with some data that Nigeria's annual GHG emission as at 2015 is 506 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. And this puts a per capita emission of Nigeria at 2.8 tons of carbon dioxide compared to global average of 7 tons of carbon dioxide. In the context of Paris Agreement, Nigeria pledges 20% reduction of its GHG emission by 2030 unconditionally. And the country pledges 45% of reduction of GHG on condition of international support. That is what we can do on our own without necessarily, we have pledged that we can reduce our emission by 20% without receiving support. But we can do more. We can go as much as 45% if we receive support from international, organizations, either bilateral or multilateral, whichever case may be. And with Nigeria's 20% pledge, the emission will reduce to, if we are able to execute our 20%, our emission will reduce to 720 metric tons of carbon dioxide instead of 900 that we are going to have if we don't do anything. If we do business as usual, we are going to have 900 metric tons. And if we have support, we are going to, if we have support and we do have 45%, Nigeria is going to have 495 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, compared to 900 if we go as, at business as usual rate. So with this in mind, Nigeria has to embark on implementation of activities under the nationally determined contribution, including financial development to reduce carbon footprint in order to achieve both 20% and 45% reduction in GHG emission by 2030, and in line with what Nigeria signed up to under the Paris Agreement. Yeah, when you are talking of financial development and carbon emission, you find out that there have been some studies, either theoretically or empirically, and what they have come up with is just like, for instance, financial development reduces carbon emissions when the financial market provides financial assistance to the domestic farms to acquire environmental friendly and clean technology for manufacturing purposes. That is where, that is one of these, with financial development, with financial support, even within the system, even within the country, what can we have? It can reduce emission. If you say, okay, let that particular money coming from either bilateral or multilateral organization, let us use it for to provide, financial assistance to domestic farm that acquire environmental friendly and clean technology. Therefore, we are going to have reduction in emission. It also, it can also increase, financial development can also increase carbon emission when it attracts foreign investment, foreign development investment, which boosts the amount, of energy usage and the scale of economic activities in the host country. This is another, if you have a foreign direct investment and, it comes with, it comes with technology that requires much energy in use, then we are really going to have our carbon emission increasing. And financial development might also increase the number and scale of manufacturing activities in the country through availing more financial assistance to the domestic, to the domestic companies, on and on like that. Then, just like you indicated, Mr. C indicated, if you have more consumer or domestic credit provided by financial market, it can increase the scale of purchase of items such as machinery, automobiles, which consume a lot of energy. Again, our emission can just be increased. So there are quite a lot of, when you are talking of financial development and you are talking of carbon footprint or emission of carbon dioxide, then it comes, there are contradictions in the empirical findings, and these are clear indication that the relationship between the financial development and carbon emission is far from being, a conclusive issue. The relationship is still contentious, and only more empirical states, tests can help to clarify the relationship between the two variables. So, and there is still need to develop financial management models, or policies that reduce not only energy consumption, but overall quantity of carbon emission. Now, what I have tried to show here is that financial development is very critical when it comes to emission reduction. But what I've tried to analyze is that as it can lead to increase in emission, as it can lead into emission of greenhouse gases, it also can lead to reduction in, what do you call it, of emission of greenhouse gases. But as government, as a government, what do we really need to do? What does the government really need to do in terms of policy to make sure that, the financial development brings about emission reduction, within the system? This is very, very critical if we are assuming to fulfill our pledge or our pledges under the Paris Agreement. And a number of steps can be taken, and some are being taken, some can still be taken towards, doing this. For instance, Nigeria has a national policy on climate change before, but with the advent of becoming a party to the Paris Agreement, they have recently reviewed the Nigerian policy on climate change and taking into consideration the implementation of the nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement. This is just one of a critical policy issue. And in that, reference is not only made to the Paris Agreement, but also the country's involuntary contribution or involuntary commitment under the Climate Change Convention and the Kyoto Protocol. Remember, as a developing country, we also have to engage in emission of greenhouse gases under the convention as well as the protocol, though these are voluntary to the developing countries to which Nigeria belongs. Then, another policy issue is that both public and private sectors have been prompted as critical stakeholders in the implementation of the policy. When you look at the policy that has been developed, it involves, the implementation brings in both the public and the private sector. And within the context of the policy, the private sector has been mandated to adopt cleaner technologies in their production of goods and services so as to reduce emission of greenhouse gases. The mandate of the Environmental Assessment Department of the Federal Ministry of Environment has been enhanced towards implementation of environmental impact assessment of development projects all over the country. That is, realizing what we need to do under the Paris Agreement. The mandate of Environmental Assessment Department of the Ministry, their mandate has been enhanced. Then the critical stakeholders, just one more second. The critical stakeholders within the Nigerian Public Service system have been identified and also intimated about the need, this is very important, about the need to mainstream climate change activities into the development of their various sectoral policies. We have different MDAs, and they are working in collaboration with Ministry of Environment. And indeed, we have spent the last 2 days training the critical stakeholders. That was a meeting that I was yesterday before from where I came to attend the dry run. We are trying to, to train sectoral participants on how to mainstream climate change activities into the development of their various sectoral policies. And through the Ministry of Finance, because Ministry of Finance is also a critical stakeholder, government has directed their facility from financial institutions to the private sector should be conditional on adoption of cleaner technology to reduce emission of greenhouse gases. For instance, I think there are more preferences to projects like renewable energy, which is going to be a substitute for burning the fossil fuel or some other form of energy. Under the National Climate Change Program of Action, being supported by EU.
Can you round up?
MRV is very critical because no matter, whatever policies you are implementing, if you do not carry out the evaluation of those policies, they are likely, they may not likely to achieve the purpose to which they are formulated. So there is the public service do not only want to mainstream climate change activity into their sectoral policies, but also to implement their mandate within the context of best practices in order to enable Nigeria to fulfill its pledge under the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. You already have given us all what the state is doing from the policy front regarding the intersection of policy and the financial sectors with respect to the emission build-up in that sector. I think you've made that point very, very well, especially where public finance is also moved through this financial sector, especially when government policy and programs guarantee some of the projects that the private sector financial institutions participate in by providing funds. I think it's a place, is an issue that will continue to elicit continual stakeholder intervention, interaction first, and then intervention. A lot of things have been happening from your presentation. We can see, public sector support to finance projects that are low carbon in nature, especially when it has to do with funds from the Ministry of Finance. And that is very important. Like previous presentations already showed, that in time to come, maybe policy might be talking about, look, this is the percentage. For us to be able to achieve 40% mitigation in time to come, this is for every project that we're going to fund or going to support, this is how much emission reduction, transition pathway that you are going to mainstream in that project. So we appreciate your intervention. Now, but maybe you just because I have a question that, especially coming from Ochoko, that the ministry is not interested in the carbon market. Yes, I know that ministry doesn't have a repository right now, but the carbon market is actually coming back to Africa, coming back to Nigeria, and that's the whole essence of having, policy that said, look, we must achieve 20%, we must achieve 40% within these timelines. But if the MRV that you mentioned, M&E, if it's not working to aggregate this carbon, we might just be losing funds. Maybe you will intervene on that when we come back to questions. Right now, it's already good to go on. Dr.